420 Chief podcast, where we shine light on stories that matter. Stories of veterans, resilience, and the healing power of plant medicine. I'm your host, Chief, and my mission is to raise awareness about the veteran suicide crisis and break stigmas around natural healing alternatives like cannabis. Today's episode is another powerful chapter in that mission. I'm joined by Ian Hill, Army veteran and Vice President of Garrett Farms, Incorporated. Ian's journey from military service to cannabis advocacy is a testament to courage, healing, and the impact of community. We'll explore his personal story, the work at Garrett Farms, and the upcoming mission, DD420, an event dedicated to connection and purpose for veterans. If you know someone who could benefit from hearing this story, whether they're a veteran, a family member, or simply someone seeking hope, please share out this episode. You never know whose life you might touch by passing this message along. With that said, welcome in, Ian. How you doing today, brother?
How's it going, Ryan?
Good. It's cold in my area, but it's sweeping its way across the nation, is my understanding. But thank you for being here today and taking some time to tell your story and share your experiences.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here and very much honored.
Outstanding. Well, Ian, let's start off. Just tell us a little bit about your background prior to service and what was it initially that really got you to join the Army?
Well, I graduated high school in 2001, and the safe side of the story is I was a theater geek in high school, and the very last play we did right before I graduated was called Grunts, and it was basically a stage adaptation of the movie Platoon about Vietnam. And one of the way that the director helped us prepare for our roles, I was actually the medic. But one of the way the directors helped us prepare for our roles in that was he had a whole bunch of Vietnam vets come in and do these roundtable discussions where they all just kind of sat around, and they had the knowledge of the cast can ask them any question, no matter what the question was, they're going to answer it. And one of the vets was like a helicopter pilot in Vietnam that had been shot down twice while he
Wow.
was in the country. And so they just came back with these stories on stories on stories. And I was like, man, I really kind of want my own stories. And so, yeah, a little bit later on after graduation and stuff like that, needed some purpose and direction in my life. And I didn't want to go to college. So I felt the military was the best bet, and I wanted to go into the Coast Guard, and walked into the recruiting station, and they were out to lunch, and turned around and the Army was right behind it, and there was one guy eating his lunch in the office still. So I became a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout.
Man, just like that. Coast Guard was at lunch. Life
Yeah,
decision. This guy's here. I'm not waiting. Let's go.
that's how it went.
Wow. So you went from there. Where did you go from after you graduated Army boot camp, Ian?
So this is where the story actually kind of gets a little hard to believe, but I promise you, it's all true. I got my DD 214 to prove it. So we were going to basic in Fort Knox because that's where all the Cav Scouts went then. And as soon as we were getting our duty assignments and everything, the drill sergeant came and was like, something's got to be wrong with this, because like a quarter of our troop got assigned to Fort Campbell with the 101st Airborne. And that's, not a Cav Scout duty station. That's infantry. And sure enough, the Army was setting up these new unit of action things. And so they were standing up a 4th Brigade in Fort Campbell with the 101st, and we got assigned to that duty station. And then it was the 4th BCT for a long time. And then obviously we needed a unit designator before we were going to deploy. So instead of creating a new one, they just basically go into the history of the 101st and pick a unit that was deactivated and reactivated. And we got reactivated as the 506, so the Band of Brothers.
Wow,
Which,
making history right there, huh?
dude, standing out in the parade field for whatever 3 hours or whatever in the middle of the summertime, getting that unit designator sucks. Everybody's had to do it. But at the end of it, we all piled into the defect, and I got to hear Bill Garnier tell the "I got my leg blown off in Bastogne" story, which That's the whole reason I joined the Army, is to tell cool stories, and hearing that story that's probably the highlight of it all.
And that's something that you mentioned that brought it back to me. My, second oldest son always said that I was more interesting than other dads, and I didn't figure out why until much later, and it's because being in the military, you get all of these experiences, especially if you've been overseas or in a combat zone that not everyone has, and to a younger person, to a younger mind, that's so interesting, I've always been fascinated, much like you're talking about, speaking with some of the Vietnam veterans or even our good friend Doc, when you start talking about stories, it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is the stuff that they make movies about, and here I am talking to them in real life," and so your everyday veterans like that, are real life heroes, so it's interesting, these stories, and I think it's funny how that gets us to do things at our young age, like trying to join special forces or things like that. We're like, "That's cool," you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess when I got to the unit, we started off 161 Cav, which was another deactivated unit, reactivated. And I trained with the line unit for basically 2 years before we deployed in 2006 and to Iraq. Right before we deployed, I got moved over to a MIT team, a military transition team, and we were going to Baghdad with the idea of giving the transition of the power and control back to the Iraqi army and stuff like that. So we were training them up and working with them, which was cool as shit because I got to qualify with every weapons platform you could qualify for before we deployed. So we had to train other people how to use them and stuff, right? So that was fun. Halfway through that deployment, our sergeant major said, "All of you lower enlisted guys haven't ever seen combat before, so we're going to swap you out with other guys in your old units, and so you can see what a real war is like." And did that for 4 or 5 months, and then got switched up to the final unit that I was in, which was Brigade HHC. I became the HHC commander's driver, which is not the colonel; it's the captain that's in charge of the company that the colonel's in. Um, but yeah, which came with a slew of titles and positions: guide on bear, barracks RNU, mailroom orderly, and then eventually the CBURN and COIC, the chemical guy for our company. Even though I was a cab scout, that was fun. Um, got to send the first sergeant to the gas chamber though. That was
Those are always fun times. I always
yeah.
find those are the memories that I enjoyed the most, when we get to have fun with our senior officers.
Oh
Sometimes
yeah.
expose them to the suck a little bit.
Yeah, my first sergeant and I had an estranged relationship because I was the Cav Scout, and when we were in Iraq, I got into enough combat that you got some ribbons and the cab, and a lot of the stuff out of it that he didn't have as a first sergeant because he was S1, and like he had this huge chip on his shoulder, especially if we did a Class A inspection, and so he always kind of had it out for me. So making him take his mask off and being the one that could tell him when he put it back on was kind of fun for,
Of
a
course. That is
masochistic moment, I guess.
I'm guessing he didn't give you a coin for that.
He had no control over it. I did. And that was like the only time that ever happened. So I took advantage of the moment. Yeah, absolutely.
So, after your training unit, you said you ended up getting out of the Army after that you were in that
Yeah.
unit?
So we came back from Iraq. I deployed to Afghanistan again in '08. Got stop loss, that whole fun stuff, and came back in '09. And one of the things that happened during the Afghanistan deployment, again, I was with the HHC unit. So my line unit was also in Afghanistan at the same time because I didn't come out of the brigade. And I was hearing, stories coming back from line unit guys. And then one of the guys, it wasn't in my platoon, it was the second platoon, Sergeant Hassenflug, they were going out on a patrol with some of the police force. And one of the police force guys was having a bad day and turned around and just started shooting people, and ended up killing him. And so they brought him back to Salerno, where I was stationed. We had his hero flight. I really didn't think anything of it. And then as we were deploying back, I don't know how this happened, but I deployed back with my line unit, because I was on a pre-deployment for the headquarters when I came over. So I deployed back with my line unit. joking around with all those guys. And I remember getting off the plane, and I did not count them, but I remember there were 23 steps coming off the plane. And as soon as we stepped off the last step, the colonel's wife was standing there because the colonel hadn't redeployed yet, thanking everybody for their service. And I remember shaking her hand and turning and taking 2 steps and looking up, and standing in front of the crowd of people was his wife and 3 daughters standing there. And um, I that just the, every time I would go to sleep, that's what would come up in my mind. And I didn't sleep. Well, when we got back, I didn't sleep for more than like 30, 45 minutes at a time before I wake up again, and just cold sweat. And it got to be really tough and really hard. As I was ETSing, because I got stop loss, so I'm getting out at this time. I'm disconnecting from the military, and one of my friends had come up to see me, and I was telling them I wasn't doing real well when sleeping, and he was like, "Well, here, smoke this joint." And I was like, "Man, I'm in the Army. I can't smoke a joint." He looked over and he's like, "What are they going to do? Kick you out quicker?" And I
Right.
was like, "Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah."
Valid.
So I smoked it and I slept. I didn't have any dreams. I found out as long as I have THC in my system, I don't dream. Not the first little bit of it. And so I just, you know, would go off base. I actually, Fort Campbell's in the middle of some big old cornfields, man. And I found the edge of a cornfield and just had my jar of weed in Kentucky, which is one of the worst states you could possibly think about getting caught
Back
with
then,
anything. And so, yeah, in the corner of this cornfield, I just had this jar. And every evening after we would get done doing whatever paperwork for like the, 6 weeks it took to get out of the military, I'd go across the road and from base and just get high at night and come back on and be able to sleep. And then came back home and just started smoking all the time. And yeah, you don't want to see me sober now.
wow, so
But
that was
then
pretty quick after. So you said it just a couple months. Well, you were still in, and your buddy
I was
said,
still in. Yeah, like I mean, like I had the really nasty portion of my PTSD for fifth. Well, all right, hang on. I had the initial bad portion of my PTSD for 15 days ish, 2 weeks before my friends showed up with the weed. And yeah, that it wasn't that bad until later on in life, after we get out and we started having the legal issues with all of the things marijuana, um, which
so
is where
why don't you walk us through your transition back, right? So you got back, you were having a hard time sleeping, no sleep at all, and that's common a lot amongst a lot of veterans that
yeah.
I've
Oh,
met.
yeah, it was really fun because it's the second that the last flight landed at Fort Campbell, it was I came back in March, so that flight landed maybe in May or sometime. They decided they were going to celebrate with this ginormous fireworks show. And that was like all of us are in the barracks, are like down on the floor trying to figure out where to go because we don't have any duck and cover shelters like we did. Just came back from Afghanistan, and here they are just celebrating with fireworks. And it was like, what idiot decided that this was going to be a good idea? But yeah, transitioning back out of the military, I just got out, tried to figure out what I was going to do with life, jobs here and there. It took me 5 or 6 years to figure out that I couldn't work for anybody else. That's not going to be an option. And
What was
then
going on? Like, if you when you had jobs, talk us through a little bit of that, like, why couldn't you, like
uh, I just like it was either something in the job that didn't really fit with me. The last job that I had, I was actually at for 4 years, and that one was fun because I was building furniture frames at a very contemporary furniture factory that had like an inventory of like 10,000 pieces of furniture. And there were only 13 people working in the factory, so it was small. So I never built the same piece of furniture twice in a day. And it was like playing with Legos. Problem was, I was making $14 an hour. The last thing I was getting paid when I was working there, and that was I was supporting at that time 2 kids at that time, and a wife, all on my own with that salary. And I went up to my boss and I was like, I need more money. This isn't going to work for me long term. And he says, well, you can learn to upholster and then we'll give you an extra dollar an hour. And I was like, that's bullshit because the upholsterers start off at 20. And I kind of like what I'm doing, so I just like to make more money. And they're like, well, you're salary capped at your position. And that was the first part of it. And then the second part of it, the owner of the factory came in and was touring around, and the guy, the not the plant foreman, but the guy that was right under him, came up to me and was like, you know what? He's got an apartment building in Manhattan, and I saw what he pays for a month, and it's more than what you make in a year. But I was salary capped, and I said, I can't stand for this. I'm not going to stand for this. And that's when I found out that the Army was going to pay me to go back to college. So I went back and got my business degree.
Wow. Good
Yep.
choice, I would say. Definitely a good choice for your future, to invest in you and go back to school and get out of there. Because when you get capped, there's no room for growth. They really have nothing to offer. You're controlled. You're stuck at that point. So, talk
Yeah. And
what happened.
if you're not comfortable when you're capped, why would I ever stay in that position?
Right.
Right.
So you realized, I can't. I'm done working for other people, and I that resonated with me when you said that, because I remember when I was there in corporate America working for a multi-billion-dollar company, and people are running down the hall freaking out about a server being down or a website being down. And I'm like, "But nobody's hurt, like, this isn't really that big of a deal," and I felt like we create such stress and anxiety when it doesn't have to be so serious, and that was a big trigger for me, and definitely unhealthy. So I had to recognize that about myself. Um, so you realized that you needed to go in business for yourself, and kinda talk us through, um, the steps of that. What did that look like for you, Ian?
Yeah, I started business school at the local community college, with the design of transferring to a 4-year degree program. And when you do that, they start giving you all of your liberal arts classes first. And biology 101 said, "Nah, you're not going to do this." I know exactly. I'm a farmer. I know how the plant works. I don't need to know how that works on a cellular level. Uh, so I just changed to a 2-year degree program, and then they started taking business classes, and they all wanted me to make these fake businesses. And I was like, that's, developing a 48-page business plan about a fake business that's never going to see the light of day. I'm not going to do that. That's bullshit. But I had a family farm. My dad had pretty much retired at that point. He's just kind of, he called it retirement farming, doing the parts of it that he wanted to do, not as a job, just so he had something to do. And so I had the farm, and I was like, oh, why don't I just, instead of doing a fake business, just do it all for the farm? And so my professors loved it because I was actually doing, all the stuff that we were talking about, and just started trying to learn how to sell vegetables. That's what we did. We grew summer vegetables from 1945 until 2017, 18, somewhere right around in there.
Wow. So you went to school and came back basically to the family farm that your dad was doing for just to occupy his time, you said? Didn't
Mhm.
really. Yeah, just to do something to stay focused, stay on mission,
Well, I
have.
needed my business, and I didn't have any money because you know how the army doesn't enjoy giving us a whole lot of money. And then, yeah, they took a little bit of it while I was in Afghanistan. Like I said, me and the first sergeant didn't exactly get along real well.
Yeah. Talk us through, so you got the family business going, you said that was going for a few years, and then what
Yeah.
happened?
So we just tried doing the vegetable thing. We tried getting GAP certified, good agricultural practices, so we could sell to grocery stores and the wholesalers. I tried selling direct to restaurants. Tried doing all of the food things, and I realized that you either had to scale up to a level that I wasn't willing to grow food at, or employ people for a whole lot less than what they deserve to be paid. And the business model was not functioning, which really started me down this path because as you're learning about the food system, and why it doesn't work, you also see what's coming. And you're talking, by the time that my kid, who's 12 years old right now, is my age, starvation is going to be a real thing happening all over the world again. There's just not going to be enough people or enough food for the people. And there's not going to be enough farms anymore. The food quality out there is going to be such trash because that's what's going to have to be produced in mass to feed everybody. And it's like we're going to get to a point where quality food is going to become more valuable than money, in my opinion.
Right.
And to be able to have a small family farm and seeing them disappear left and right, because my dad's generation is the average age of a farmer. When I looked at it last, is 4 or 5 years ago. The average age of a farmer in Virginia was 59, and they're just not being replaced because nobody wants to work your ass off for nothing.
Well, I think there's a lot more to it than that. There's been so much more control over the types of crops you can use, that you have to use, the nutrients, not just with crops, but with the animals, as far as getting them vaccinated and specific feeds. And from my understanding, that market has been really monopolized. And
When
it's,
you get into meats, it gets really, really scary really fast.
yeah. But I want to redirect us back. So,
Yeah.
you guys, how did the farm evolve? You said
So
you
we
guys,
went to vegetables. Obviously, that didn't work. So we started. This is literally how it goes. We started talking about shutting everything down. And this was in 2018, right after the growing season in 2018, so Augustish. And 2 days after we talked about shutting the farm down, a guy that my dad actually went to college comes by and is like, "Have you ever heard of CBD before?" And we were like, "No, not really." And he was like, "Well, let me tell you about hemp farming." And this was in October 18. We found out in Virginia, in order to get a hemp grower's license, your farm had to be attached to a land grant university. Well, we had been doing entomology research with Virginia Tech for a number of years with different plots on our farm, doing stink bug research and all that kind of stuff. And so we were linked to a land grant university. So we applied for the license. And in October of 2018, we were one of 52 farms in the state of Virginia to have this license. And we were like, hell yes, let's go to the wall and see how hard we can do this. We pulled out $20,000 loan and set 1,700 plants out in 2019. Unfortunately, this will tell you how I feel about Mr. Trump. In December of 2018, he signed into play the 2018 Farm Bill and removed that restriction that you had to be attached to a land grant university to get your hemp grower's license. And so from December of 2018 until February of 2018, we went from 52 farms to over 1,400 farms. Everybody was growing CBD. Now, here's the funny thing. They told Virginia farmers, hey, you guys aren't going to outgrow the industry. There's this like bottomless well for CBD flower. You guys can grow as much as you want. We found out very quickly by the end of 2019 that that's not a thing. We actually had 5 different people wanting to buy our crop. And then by the time that we harvested that crop, it was crickets. Nobody was buying CBD anywhere. Everybody, all 1,400 of these farms that were banking on this stuff, lost it. All of them. So few. The only success stories that you hear out there, and that's a handful of farms that's still out there doing it, is if you moved the entire processing part from planting the seed to selling the oil in house. Those were the guys, and you had the money to pay for the whole process. Those were the guys that were survive, and they're eking along because obviously CBD is not the greatest industry that everybody promised us it was going to be. And so we took that loss, and then we finally had a buyer for our crop, and then COVID showed up. And I'm in jail during all of that time. So that's a whole another side of the story that we haven't gotten into yet. But when I got back out of jail and COVID was starting to wind down a bit, I didn't see any hope in selling the flower because we still, to this day, we still have that whole crop because I can't bring myself to burn it. And I was like, we got to do something else, and I started looking into agritourism because I went to my first music festival, which was Floyd Fest. It was amazing. I was a band members plus one, so I had a backstage pass. Nobody stopped me from going anywhere. It's great. Went to my second music festival, which was Lock-In, which is the same size as Bonnaroo. It's a big music festival. And I did not have a backstage pass. And the security guy said, "Hold up, you can't come back here." And I said, "Why not?" And he explained the whole process to me rather harshly. And I decided that I was going to put a stage on my farm where the security guard couldn't stop me anymore. Um, and that was where that was where the whole dream started.
Yeah, what
Uh,
a dream too. That's awesome, because I that feeling of being on the stage while a band plays, to me, always resonates. I do music lives on TikTok, and I teach people that you can listen to music, you can listen to music with other people and really vibe to it, and it's transcendental. It takes you sometimes to another place, another time, or another headspace for sure. But to have that freedom to, be up there on stage and talk to the entertainers and just be right by the speakers is a whole vibe in itself.
yeah, and it gives you a different perspective of the artist, and that when you're designing a festival, part of what you have to take into account is the artist experience. That's a whole part of setting up a multi-band festival, right? Is how you treat your artist and how they get treated and stuff like that. And seeing from their perspective and everything, it's kind of interesting, and gives you a new respect really for celebrities. Like, yeah, I really want to go talk to that guy, but I don't want to do it at the jeopardy of his personal space and time. And if he's standing out there with his family, I'm definitely not going to go ask him for a signature, right?
Right.
And we actually, based on all of that new knowledge, I actually have a business plan, business model for a festival that's actually artist centered, which could be very, very, very cool, if we make it work. But I'm not going to tell anybody about it because proprietary.
Right. So before we move forward anymore with we're at building the stage, I want to go back a little bit and tell your story about you mentioned you did some time in lockup. You want to tell us a little bit about that? What happened there?
Yeah, so I
And
had to get a waiver to join the military to start off with because like I said, having cool stories was part of it. The other part of it was I got busted for selling weed. And yeah, that sucked. I walked in on my friend's house while they were raiding it. They were like, "You got any weapons on you?" And I said, "No." And they were like, "You got any drugs on you?" And I was like, "Here." And they were like, "Oh, that doesn't happen every day." I should just turn around and walk away. But no, dumb kid. So got arrested. Needed a way to help turn my life around. Join the army. Yada yada yada. So get out of the army. Obviously, I'm smoking weed, not really trying to sell it for a while, and then I got married, got a divorce, and as I'm going through the divorce, obviously money becomes quite a bit tighter, and I needed a way to pay for the weed, and the only way that I've ever been able to do that in the past with no money is by selling it, and then my profit is just what I smoke every day. And so I was also a soccer referee at the time, and fellow soccer referee buddy that also happened to be a student up at Virginia Tech hit me up and asked me if I could find anything, and I said absolutely. You're a soccer referee and a college kid. You're not a cop, so sold it to him. And apparently, after the first time I sold it to him, he was smoking on campus, driving around with his headlights off in the middle of the night, and they nailed him and said, "We're going to end your life. You'll never do anything else but be a criminal for the rest of your life if you don't wear a wire on whoever sold you this." So he wore a wire on me, and my house got raided. They found a dime bag of pot, $100, and my paraphernalia. And the cops were pissed. I got a slap on the wrist that time. They dropped that felony because it was more than I sold him a little bit more than an ounce. It was like 1.02 ounces or something like that. My scales were off. Uh, and he wore the wire on me. I got raided, got a misdemeanor, a felony reduced to a misdemeanor, really a restricted license for 6 months, and then 2 years of suspended probation, unsupervised probation. So nothing really big there. And I said, you know what? I've got a kid now. I'm not going to sell weed anymore. And a few years go by, and this perfect storm hits. Like literally within 3 days, I had a fellow veteran here in Roanoke hit me up and was talking about how he was getting kicked off of pain management because he didn't have enough of his opioids in his system, and they thought he was selling his pills. And how wasn't sure how he was going to deal with the pain, so he was talking to a guy that was recommending heroin to him. I talked to another friend that was really struggling with alcoholism, and was his wife actually came to me crying and asked me if I knew of any way to help him. And a third buddy came and said his stepmom was probably going to die because she was getting kicked off of her chemo treatments because she couldn't eat anything while she was on it. And I'm like, damn, there's one answer for all of these people. And that like I said, day 3 I was going to a friend's house who had come in from Oregon and was here for Thanksgiving, was talking to him, and he basically came up and said, yo man, I have a greenhouse out in my backyard. I could just ship you some stuff back, and you can just give it to them. And there's no money, so there's no sale, so it's pretty risk free. And I said, sure. And so that happened. And the 4th package, I think, that came in, a dog picked up on it in the sorting facility. Keep in mind, this is all going down in 2017, 18, somewhere right around in there. And the dog picked up on it in the sorting facility. They got a warrant to open the box. They found there was 3.5 pounds of weed in it. They dressed up a van to look like a FedEx van and put a cop in the FedEx uniform and did a controlled delivery to me. And the second that I opened the box, it had a GPS sensor and a light sensor in it. And within about 45 seconds, the SWAT team was in my house, throwing me on the floor again, arresting me. And this time, what they got me with, I had my AR-15 laid right up against my bed. And because I had more than a pound and a firearm under the same roof, it was a federal charge. And all they had to prove is I had both of those things under the same roof, and I get a mandatory 5-year prison sentence. And they said the only way that we're going to take this off the table is if you plead guilty to distribution. And it was a felony. Now, here's where the story gets gnarly, because I convinced the judge to drop the felony to a misdemeanor a second time. Somehow, magically, I guess I'm a white boy with money, whatever it is. He dropped the felony to a misdemeanor a second time, but he sentenced me to 4 months in jail, which started February 7th, 2020, which was about 6 days before the pandemic dropped. So I spent pretty much the entire pandemic in jail. And then when I got out of jail, he sentenced me to 2 years of supervised probation. Now, supervised probation in Virginia is quite the squirrely animal. They have the ability to test you for THC if they so choose. And the Commonwealth attorney hated me, so they absolutely required me to be tested for THC. So here I am, a year into this probation. Virginia is now allowed to grow their 4 plants. I'm starting to do all of the cannabis things on the farm, real heavy and all that kind of stuff. And I'm still getting tested for THC, which means all of those nightmares that I had right when I got back from Afghanistan, they all came back. I wasn't getting any more than 45 minutes of sleep at a time, and that had been going on for a year and a half. So I can empathize with any vets that have been going through it for a long time, man. That's just not fun. And the problem was, I was doing some consultation on some grows, and I forgot I wasn't wearing any gloves. And apparently I had come into contact with enough of it that it had absorbed enough through my skin that it failed me on my next probation test, and they violated me. And the judge's response to my violation was, we'll give you a second chance, but we're restarting your 2 years. So you're going to have to go through 2 more years of drug tests. And I turned around and looked at my lawyer, and I was like, there's got to be another way. And the judge says, we'll turn your misdemeanor back into a felony. You can accept the felony. We will give you 2 more years of unsupervised probation, and you won't have to take any more drug tests, but you'll be a felon. And I said, I already own my own business. That means I can't own a firearm, basically, is the only impacts that had on me. So I said, give me the F, make me the
Wow.
felon.
That's a big
Uh,
decision, Ian.
it, it was, but I mean, we're going to go through 2 more years of 45-minute sleep increments. That sucks. I much prefer the health. And I got through the 2 years of unsupervised probation, no problem. I am 6 years. Well, it's debatable. We're not sure if I'm 5 years or 6 years into the 8 years it takes to get it all expunged. So we'll see how it goes. It is
Wow,
what it
that
is.
was quite a story on that, and what an experience, that's gotta be scary with
Well,
you're
the
out
interesting thing, the lady, the biggest success story out of all of that, and the reason why I would absolutely repeat everything that I've done. I'm not sorry for my actions. I explained to the judge when he was sentencing me, there's a difference between a criminal and an outlaw. And when somebody commits a crime, somebody else gets hurt. And an outlaw breaks the law without hurting anybody. And you can call me an outlaw all you want, but don't call me a criminal. And the lady, I'm going to get emotional when I say this. The lady that couldn't finish her chemo ended up smoking and getting a bunch of the flower and finished out her chemo and is living cancer free today. Thank God. And she is the sister-in-law of the judge that sentenced me, and I could not bring that up before. That the judge was literally sentencing me to 4 months in jail because I saved his sister-in-law. That's the irony of the story for sure.
It's crazy how the universe works, and what a lesson for so many people with that one, and I'm glad that outcome, that you were able to be a part of that, to tell that story because that's what's really important, and I hope that judge finds out about his
Uh,
sister-in-law.
I, I, at this point, I kind of it doesn't. It's water over the dam now because believe it or not, everything happens for a reason, and our governor right now is setting up a recreational market in Virginia, and they're talking. One of the first points of all that is expungement of all cannabis convictions. As if you're a felon, you're going to have to apply for that expungement, but you don't have to wait the 8 years anymore. And if they do that, I don't have any convictions on my criminal record anymore. Woo-hoo.
Huge changes coming for sure. Now I wanna go back to, you'd mentioned you had the farm, you're invested back in the farm, and now you've built a stage on the farm. So let's go from there. Let's talk about
The
where
stage
you
was a very interesting thing. In fact, the whole agrotourism side of it's really interesting because, each time we took this, we're keep in mind when I decided we're doing agrotourism, we're still 20K in debt at that point. And thanks to literally my mother bailing us out, we don't have that debt hanging out, although we are still in the process of repaying my mother. And so everything up here we had to do with no capital, like nothing. I don't have any money to spend on anything, and so we made through a series of dealings. You want to do something up here on the farm, build something, fix that road, do this or do that. And over the process, we've built up little by little the infrastructure that that we have. In fact, this spring we're getting two public water hydrants put in so that we can attach water filling stations, so that we don't have to buy pallets of water anymore. Um, so every little step of the way, we get a little bit more of the infrastructure built up. We've got some amazing partnerships with Playlist for Life Foundation, which is a nonprofit that is dedicated to suicide prevention and alternative forms of mental health treatment and awareness. We've partnered up with Pearl Productions, which runs Nokefest, that has built quite the sustainable event. This year will be year two. We're getting ready to announce that lineup coming up.
walk
But
us through what does that look like? Because that's a music festival so that people
yeah,
can get
no,
like a visual of what one of these festivals is.
yeah, Nokefest is the 3-day music festival. It's the big one. Um, Definitely has camping, full band lineup. I'm not sure how many bands are going to be this year, but here's a little tip, and no one knows this right now. But if you want to hear the entire 2026 Nokefest lineup several days before it's announced, go on to Spotify and type in Nokefest 2026. There's interesting artists in that playlist.
Noise.
I don't know what else to say. So,
So it's a music
but yeah,
fest,
yeah,
right?
it's
Usually you've got some bands, you've got some vendors.
band vendors, food vendors. It's a 3-day event. We let people. That's the one where we let people in the river because it's in June, so it's warm enough. So people get and float down the river, and then we have tons of activities that kind of show up and play out as we get closer, for sure. And that's Nokefest, but that's not the first festival that we're doing, which is kind of one of the big reasons why we're here talking today, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I did an interview with Doc Ray. It was actually the last veteran interview I completed on this channel, on this platform. And after the interview, we were talking about doing a veteran meetup that was 420 friendly because there's just so many different walks of life that we found behind this plant, behind this industry, and we can come together, unite, and extend networks in its entirety. And so it was just maybe a couple of days later, Doc called me back and said, "Hey, I know a place, I know a guy," and mentioned Garrett Farms. He mentioned you. He mentioned your father. He loves your father very much. Another Vietnam veteran, correct?
No, no, no. My father's not the veteran. Both my grandfathers were. My
Okay.
father got drafted and flunked out because of his elbows.
So Doc
So
knew him.
he
He
can
knew
make
you
a play.
guys. And then he mentioned Springfest, which is the music festival.
That I announced 2 days before I got a phone call from you guys.
And
Yeah, it's funny how all that works out.
it is, and in hand with that, you guys have your Diamond Cup, which is a cannabis cup happening that same day, and Doc said, "You know what? They're fine. We can accommodate some veterans to stay overnight." And it was just too much in alignment because I've been to so many meetups where I've stayed in cabins, I've stayed, I've tented, I've stayed in my own car with my service dog. So I was like, this is perfect because so many veterans have RVs or tents and just want to get out and hang out together. What better way than to sit around, listen to some music, and what a great location. I think you said half a mile of Roanoke River exposure on the
Yep.
bottom of the property. Got the band already. It's just such a vibe.
Yeah,
So
May
I
2nd might be a little cold still to get in the river, but if you want to bring your fishing pole, uh, totally okay. I think a fishing license is like $25 at Walmart, but whatever.
right. So
Um,
I was incredibly blown away that Doc had come back to me. It's like this incredible, impeccable turnaround time, and that you had already had all of these things going on. So I was like, I've got to get this out to the veteran community. And since then, I went out to Washington, D.C. to speak at the Capitol building and to all kinds of House representative staff, senator staff, senators, to help push the hemp extension to ban
is
the hemp
it
ban.
HB 7012
Yep.
or something like that? Seven.
And
Yeah.
but while I was there, I met up with even more veterans and talked about this, and what a networking opportunity it really already is. So I'm excited to partner up and that we could work it out so flawlessly so far. So the details, it is May 2nd
May
at
2nd.
Garrett Garrett
Garrett
Farm.
Farms. Yeah. And here's what I'm going to tell to the veteran community. So, Springfest is the 5th year that the event's been running. It's had several different names, but this is its 5th incarnation. It was designed to be a single day event that I could use to show other event promoters that you can do an event for pretty much nothing. So the vendor fees pay the cost for the porta johns and the insurance. It's pretty much set up so that all the costs are paid for up by the upfront fees that you collect that are non-refundable. So, and because of that, we wanted to keep the price as low. And for the past 2 years, it's been free entry. to these events just because it's kind of a way that we can give back. It's also our opening day of our greenhouse where we're pushing the genetics out of the greenhouse. So we felt we're making money that way. So let's just keep it as low cost on everybody. The Diamond Cup was the first year we attached. Last year was the first year we attached the Diamond Cup to Springfest, and within I think 2 weeks we had sold all of the cup entry spaces because we're very particular about how we judge that cup, and we want to give each judge that has a sample, the sample has its own day so you can actually judge the high accurately. So you're not having to sit there and smoke one right after the other, after the other, after the other, and be like, oh, well, obviously the last one's high was the best.
Yeah, you definitely would get the effects of each one confused, so that's imperative.
Yes. So we try to break it up like that. And we had 3 judges last year, and we had 25 entry available entry spots. Man, I tell you what, I've been smoking some AJ Sour Diesel, and it's kind of treating me a little too blue dreamy, amnesia hazy. So talking can be a little rough right now. But anyways, we had 3 judges. They did an excellent job, and we had presented it out. There's a VIP portion to that. So when we have Springfest and we're announcing the winners, before that, you can pick up one of these 20 VIP tickets. Very, very exclusive. We'll never sell more than that. And basically, there is a 2-hour block in the middle of Springfest where you're going to get to come into the tent. Most of the judges will be circulating in and out throughout that time frame, and you'll get a behind the scenes look at the judging process. A lot of the entries, you'll get to pass them around and see them, touch them, smell them. Everybody else just gets to look at it, the bud sitting in the jar. But you get that intimate experience with a lot of that. And it was a resounding success as far as I'm concerned. We probably had about 500 people turn out throughout the course of the event. It worked out really well. And then we had another successful Nokefest right after that one. Blew it up a lot. I work really close with our local ganjier and Esponder, and we kind of fell into this artist relations role at Nokefest because I could walk backstage and I always had weed. We were always smoking some, and a lot of the artists like to smoke weed, and so they would be like, "Hey, can we smoke that?" And so we found out, hey, we can go back and smoke with fans now.
Kinda
And
your
it
ultimate dream, like you talked about earlier,
Yeah,
having that
yeah,
backstage
exactly.
pass.
It was exactly what everything I wanted. Cody built a great festival, and it was just like, yes, this is awesome. And one of the bands that we went back and talked to, one of the first ones was Dr. Bacon. And so I've been, keeping up with those guys and hit them up this year and was like, yo, I'd love for Garrett Farms to sponsor Dr. Bacon in 2026. Can we work something out like that? And so Dr. Bacon is coming to Springfest to play for everybody. We are charging $10 a ticket for all of that to be able to cover sound guy and all that stuff. But they're coming out and playing, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. If you've never heard Dr. Bacon, definitely check them out on Spotify. They're awesome.
I was
And because I've developed that a little bit of relationship with them, when we started setting up Mission DD 420, I hit them up and I was like, guys, there's going to be a bunch of vets camped out. You guys are have a hotel right down the road for the night. So would you be willing to do a second set after the event closes for the vets that are camping? And they said, yeah, normally we'd have to charge, double for that, but no, they're vets. Let's do it. So we'll rock them out. We'll play a whole different set. And it's like, woo.
absolutely amazing, and I have to say, when Doc and I were talking about this initially, we've both seen it. Doc said that he stayed on the mountain. He came off the mountain to meet the veterans that had these stories of healing from using his genetics. And his mission is to get veterans out of isolation because that's one of the biggest things that we're seeing across the country is veterans are just isolating themselves and feel alone, and we've got a suicide crisis on our hands. So there are a lot of different types of veteran meetups. I've been invited to fishing ones, I've attended snowmobiling ones, camping ones, all types of them, hunting ones, but I've never been to one specifically focused on cannabis. And I said, Doc has his own network. I have a network of followers. You have a network of followers. Even my good friend Jason, I've interviewed on this channel, just Chillbilly, is entering into the cup. So just so many different folks getting together out of isolation and letting networks network and getting people together on mission and with a battle buddy as a reminder you're never really alone. We just oftentimes don't talk about what we're doing or what we need help with because we're so used to doing it all by ourselves. Like you said, everything you did, you had to face adversity. You had to build it all by yourself. To get that untethered access that you have now, you literally had to build your own stage. You had to book your own contracts. But now look at it. It's gone from you've hosted successful festivals, music festivals, to now what I'm going to say is the largest documented 420 friendly veteran meetup in history, aside from when they actually started issuing out veteran medical cards in California. I think that will do better in numbers just based on the mission because there's so many folks coming out for this that the diversity will be unreal. There will be somebody for everybody. And music, great vibe, paired with the great location. Um, it's going to be tremendous. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see people coming together and real healing actually taking place.
Absolutely. Um, and one other thing I really want to touch on is the legal stuff. As far
Yeah,
as the cannabis goes, especially in our state, it's a little tricky right now, and it's all changing. But the cool part about how it's changing, what we already have isn't going to get any worse. So it's not going to get any more restringent than everything is already. So what we're doing and planning for these events that are coming up this year is the exact same way we've handled it every other year. And so I definitely wanted to talk about what that looks like if you're coming from out of state to DD 420 and the cannabis side of things. Because I know if this thing was in California and I was going, I'd want to know, all the ins and outs and what that looks like, right?
absolutely. And safety is
So
paramount. We don't
yeah,
want anyone to get into trouble. So I think it's important to cover really uh, just transportation. Well, I'm not even gonna say that. There's no sales on your physical location.
yes. So that is one thing when I'm talking to all of the vendors that are going to be at Springfest that we definitely have a conversation. If you have a product that contains a cannabinoid, it has to comply with Virginia's laws, and you're going to have a hemp license of either a grower's license or a processor's license. You're going to need to have a COA book on all of your products that contain cannabinoids. If you have some form of genetics like seeds, the seeds have to be packaged properly and all that kind of stuff. In Virginia, hemp is defined as any cannabis product or flower that contains less than 0.3% total THC. Now, what you're going to find in the gas stations, we're not going to get into that here, but the that's what we're allowing on the farm. That's hemp. Okay, anything that's above that threshold in any form is considered to be marijuana. Marijuana cannot be sold legally in the state of Virginia right now, which means everything is gifted. And at these events, everybody shows up with what they grew that year. Because in Virginia, we're also allowed to grow four personal plants that we can harvest. And so everybody's doing the diamond cups. So everybody shows up with their flour and their rosins and all of the fun stuff. And you'll see one vendor sitting over here taking dab hits and all of that kind of stuff. And so if you're coming from an illegal state or you have to cross an illegal state to get here, don't worry, we got you covered. All you have to do is walk up into a circle where something's getting passed around and it's going to get passed to you. That's how it is in Virginia. Sharing's caring. We all love each other. Um, we make sure that everybody's taken care of, everything's safe. and everybody is in a legal environment.
Oh, there you are. Lost you for a second. I lost you for
Oh,
a
sorry
second.
about that. Yeah. Are we better?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay. Where did you lose me at? We
Right
just
at
want to
the
make sure, basically, we just want to make sure everybody stays safe and legal. And that has been the number one concern in all of my events. And it will always be the number one concern in my events going forward.
And I don't want anyone to feel pressured. They don't have to consume any products, and nobody's trying to force anything onto anybody else. This is strictly an event, a get together, a meetup for true healing to happen, and that will happen in many, many, many ways. Doc will be hosting some smoke circles, though, for those that are interested. But I think it's imperative to state that if you have any concerns about transportation, don't. You will be taken care of. And I want to say thank you, Ian, for making that possible and um, creating the venue and having the vision and building it for something like this. Because if the VA's going to continue to do what they're doing and continue to overprescribe opioids and SSRIs that are increasing the mortality rate of our veterans, this is a way to make a change with that. This is something that I have used, you have used, and so many other veterans that I've talked to and you've talked to and doc thousands, tens of thousands of veterans have used in the United States to seek healthier healing, not just to cope with something, not just to put a band-aid solution on, but to find actual healing. So thank you so much, and thank you for coming on today, sharing your story, and I'm really excited to get more communications out about the event as it evolves, and we'll continue to send out safety reminders, safety messages. But if you are interested or have any questions about the event, please feel free to reach out to Ian or myself. The event is posted on Facebook, Mission DD420, as well as I put it on my LinkedIn page also, and we've got um, some people have taken action over there, so that's really exciting. A lot of diversity. Um, Ian, the last thing I'll say, what advice would you give to any of our
Well,
veterans?
hang on. Before you say that, real quick, if you are
Go ahead.
interested in signing up for the Cannabis Cup, or as a vendor or sponsor for Springfest or DD420 Mission DD420, hopefully my goal is during the snowstorm that we're all about to endure. Um,
Snowmageddon.
Yeah, exactly. Right, Snowmageddon. February 1st, I'm hoping that we will announce through our Facebook platform that our website is up and running. And once we do that, we will have all of the registration forms for all three of those, the Cannabis Cup, the vendors, and the sponsors, available on our website. Fingers crossed. If not, it'll all get done through email. That's plan B.
Okay,
So
and the announcement will be made either way on Facebook, I would
on
assume.
Facebook, absolutely, on May 1st, one way or another, however you're going to get signed up, that will come out on our Facebook page on May 1st for sure.
And that's Garrett Farms Inc., y'all. Garrett Farms Inc.
Yeah.
And you'll find the event there. You'll also find it under mine, Ryan Johnson, on Facebook. And if you can find Garrett Farms Inc., you'll see both Ian and myself as hosts for the event as well for Springfest. Now, to clarify for listeners out there, Springfest is actually open to the public. The Diamond Cup and Dr. Bacon until from 1300, that's 1 p.m. Eastern time, through 1800, 6 p.m. That's open to
Open to
everyone.
the public. Yes. And
1800. Yep, go ahead.
the Dr. Bacon set will go from 5 to 6, and then that will be the where we close the gates. And if you're not camping or invited by a veteran, then you have to leave. And once that's all down, we're camping out. We actually have one of our food vendors that is planning at this point on potentially staying over to take care of our campers. So we'll still have food, and Dr. Bacon will come out and do their second set just for the vets, and we'll party down. It'll be good times.
And then the following morning, you said there'll be a vendor there for breakfast as well.
Yes, in order for us to have a campground, we have to make sure that there's food up here. So there will either be a vendor, or if we don't have that many people out there, then that they're camping out, then we'll just go pick up some food.
Doc
But
said he'd
we're gonna
cook it
figure
up. He said he's good on the grill,
it
and he doesn't mind taking care of veterans, so we'll figure it out, but
I mean, you're on a farm. We'll go crack some eggs if we need to.
I think so, and I'm excited just to see the connections that are going to be made, so if you know of any veterans that are 420 friendly or curious even, this would be one of the safest, most informational events to come to, not just with consumption, but also with growing, and that is a whole 'nother conversation for another show, because that is a therapy all in itself. But I
Amen.
do need to close us out today, and I just want to say one last time, Ian, thank you so much for what you've how you've overcome and for sharing your story today and your mission. And I'm just so excited to be in alignment with you, in alignment with Doc Ray, um, in helping so many veterans from across the nation already. We've gotten registrations from Washington State to several veterans in Virginia, from South Carolina, all over the nation. And so I'm really excited to be part of something like that and to help out in a way where our own VA system is failing our service members.
Well, thank you, Ryan, for creating this platform and inviting me out, because it is reaching out to veterans, and hopefully we are speaking, the education that they need to hear, because nobody needs to be taking an opioid long term, anyways.
Amen. Well, thank you again, Ian. Much love to you, and I'll be right back. So hang out and behind the scenes with me just for a moment. Anyways, thank you for joining us today, 420 Chief Podcast, and for being a part of this movement. We're changing lives through honest conversations and plant based healing. Ian's story is just one of many, and each one brings us closer to ending the silence and stigma that too many veterans are facing every day. If this episode resonated with you, or you know someone who might just need to hear it, please, please, please share it out. Um, Please subscribe so you get notified when I go live. It is free, and your simple act of sharing could make all the difference for someone searching for hope or community. For more stories, resources, and upcoming events, please check out my website, 420chief.net. And every listen, share, and conversation brings us one step closer to true healing and raising awareness. As always, lead with